We have a quorum of the entire committee is actually here, so I'm going to do a quick attendance of the people sitting here for those not here, and then I will let everyone know other board members who are present. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to get lots of information from our district administrators around our thoughts for the vacation period, the next couple of months of school, and what school might look like. Tonight is an informational meeting. We will hear a presentation. We will take input from board members and community, and we will use that information to formulate more specific plans to vote upon Thursday. So we're not voting tonight. Tonight is your chance to really truly share how you feel about what's going on and what you want us to know. So quickly, sitting at the table, Gina, are you here?
I am.
David Parker, are you here?
I'm here.
Danielle, are you here? I'm here, and I'm looking at Tom and Pam and Jim in front of me, and I know Liza's somewhere behind me, and I'm not sure about Chuck, but he's here, he'll let me know. So without further ado, I'm going to start by inviting Kathleen up to begin the presentation and to share the work that the admins have been doing and what we're thinking heading into this, and then we'll have a chance to question and comment after that. Thanks, Kathleen.
They have a pool to see how many times I knock this mic over tonight, as I've been doing, so I'll try to be a little careful with it. I want to thank Jack is here. Jack Dunn, our business administrator, is here, along with Donna Pally, our assistant superintendent. Can you hear me?
It's not very loud.
Use the microphone in the center, Kathleen, not the one.
Okay.
Good, then you don't have to worry about
Then I don't have to worry.
There we go.
There we go. Then I don't have to worry about knocking the mic over tonight. Is that why? I think that's why Josh did it.
Very destructive.
Perhaps you didn't hear, but joining us tonight is Donna Pally, our assistant superintendent, as well as Jack Dunn, our business administrator. There's probably some other folks on the screen. I heard Matt Cashman maybe with us. I know that Michael Reardon, our principal at the high school, is with us. I'm just kind of turning to see if there's anybody else. Sometimes it's hard to see with face masks, but anyway, let me start, if we could, with a very brief PowerPoint. We're not going to bore you to death with a lot of information that we've already had over time, but we kind of wanted to just update you on some statistics that may help you in your decision making. And first of all, we wanted to share with you the attendance. This is attendance October 1st. This is an average attendance at each of the schools. Those students that are in hybrid, their attendance rates, as well as the students that are in remote. So as you know, we are mandatory, it's mandatory to take attendance every day so that we know the students are with us in learning. And also, it's very helpful in terms of students that who we don't see for a day or two, and so we want to track them down pretty quickly. So teachers have been really good about it. At the high school, it happens more frequently from class to class. So, but it is an average when I provided these statistics for you. One of the questions that comes up is about what our cases are. You know, I'm going to speak on behalf of the district. They've done a fabulous job in mitigation, using the mitigation strategies that we put in place. Children wear masks. They are 6-foot distancing is employed in all aspects of the school day. In addition, washing their hands before they enter the building in the morning, their temperature is taken, as well as 7 screening questions, so that we are really able to have control of the environment. And I said to some teachers this week, they've done a fabulous job. The teachers have stepped up. They've provided extra time to help supervise hallways, supervise their classrooms, and just helping the youngsters to follow the rules, cluing them when they needed to be clued and reminded. It's worked out, I think, very well, the numbers are small. Remember, we have over 4,000 students in our schools. And to date, we have 6 students who have tested positive. And we've had 2 staff members. The other question, and I've had a couple of emails this week about transmission. And the question was, how could I really say that there hasn't been any transmission? When I talk about transmission, I'm talking about transmission from student to student, or student to teacher, or teacher to teacher, you know, all of that. And I guess I say I understand that point. I don't have absolute evidence. The only evidence that I have is that when we do contact tracing, we identify the youngsters that have been within the 6 feet range, who have been with that person for a cumulative time of 10 minutes, and within a period of 48 hours, that we would anticipate that if that was the case, they would have the virus. But in these 6 cases, we've seen no transmission. So that's why I say that. I clearly understand that I don't have, if I tested everybody every day, like some places are doing, perhaps I would identify more. We noticed that at St. Paul's, they test frequently. They bought all their own tests. And their numbers are very low. Their numbers are low. They haven't discovered more because of the testing. So I'm using that premise. I hope that I understand that if we have testing becomes available in bulk, if you will, that the governor has said that teachers would be tested at one of the first groups. So that was good to hear, since I consider our teachers to be essential workers. But I guess I have to tell you that I attribute these low numbers to the work of our staff, our teachers, our educational associates, our support staff, everyone, tutors, administrative assistants, and of course our principals who are managing all this in the building. I'm grateful for that, and they've done a spectacular job. So there's some data for you to consider. So we told you last time, we were looking at the thing that I was worried about last time. I think we talked about it, about a month ago? I told you I was worried about the travel, and what does that mean? Since then we hear these things like you can't travel outside of New England. That's a New Hampshire rule. And so what would that mean? What does that mean for the staff? Because it's essential that I have enough staff in order to teach, right? We need our teachers. We need our support staff. So Donna conducted a survey to our staff, and we got this data that 36 members of the professional staff, that would be your teachers and your specialists, would travel beyond the New England states over Thanksgiving, and you can see winter recess would be 70 for a total of 106. And then the support staff, that includes our tutors as well as our educational assistants. There's a few other folks in there too. I think an administrative assistant to a principal, that kind of thing is in that mix. So I looked at those numbers, and then I reviewed the guidance, again, from the Department of Health and Human Services. And so for my take on this, even though we have a number of staff, we consider them to be essential. I think you've heard me say that. So what happens if a staff member or student travels outside New England? That's the question, right? To need to self-quarantine for 14 days upon their return. And the answer is yes. The general recommendation is for travel guidance is that those who travel outside will have to quarantine. I mean, I think we've all said that 100 times since the beginning of this. However, exceptions to this recommendation can be made for essential employees or for staff who have to conduct essential travel. Well, we don't have essential travel, we have essential employees. We looked back, and there was also a waiver, if you will, and they allowed travel for staff to return students to college. Remember, in the fall, they allowed that, and they did not have to quarantine when they came back. And obviously, students were brought to school all over the country, so I don't have all the states, but there was a significant number who traveled outside of New England. So then we looked at exceptions around that, and we're considered, part of that critical infrastructure section. We are considered that. And so essential in the sense that they can be employed and not have the 14-day. But there are some criteria of which must be still followed. I mean, you can't just say, oh, I traveled and I can come in and it doesn't matter. There are still some criteria. The employee is not exhibiting any signs or symptoms. The employee is not in a household contact, so if somebody else has it in their home, they will have to quarantine. Essential or not, they have to quarantine. And again, the teachers are essential to our business and the business of educating children. The other piece is that, we have this issue around remote. Now, we have a number of teachers who are teaching remotely. Some of them did that because of various issues, ADA issues, or family medical leave issues. We also have a handful, not many, with child care issues, which is allowed under the CARES Act. So we do have teachers that are currently remote teaching. And those staff members will continue to provide remote instruction and continue to work with the group that they've been assigned. Again, this is kind of repetitive. The employee works in a critical infrastructure sector, that is education. I'll show you that on the next page. Again, if there's any other issues that require some quarantining. And then they also talk about the masks and the 6-foot distancing and all the health screening that we do. So that's pretty much as outlined in CDC guidelines. So what is a critical infrastructure? I wanted to repeat that. It's an education. We took this right out of the guidance. The educational facility section covers pre-K, kindergarten through grade 12, institutions of higher ed, as well as business and trade schools. So lots of times I ask, well, what is everyone else doing? That's been asked of me quite a bit. So as you know, I meet with the Lakes Region superintendents monthly, if not, it was sometimes more than that if needed. And they are all returning after the holidays to their hybrid. Most every district is in hybrid. And with the exception of Kearsarge, they decided to do 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, so the 2 weeks from November 30, which is the first day back, and 2 weeks into December. And then apparently they're going to make another decision then. One of the concerns I have was flip-flopping. I didn't want to just say, okay, we started the year out in remote, then we went to hybrid, then we returned to remote, then we go back to hybrid. I got a lot of feedback from families and moms and dads who emailed me over the last couple of weeks. That was a concern of theirs. They felt it was disruptive to their children's learning and the routines that kids need, right, to every day, which is so important to them. So then I decided, look around, I talked to the superintendent both in Bow and in Hopkinton, and I'm going to continue with their hybrid. And I looked at some larger schools, Class L schools. I use Class L, they're just large. They use that in athletics. I know, but I use it in my head sometimes. And so we talked to some of those superintendents. Merrimack, not Merrimack Valley. Merrimack Valley is going to stay in hybrid. Merrimack, the town of Merrimack, which is very similar to Concord in size, is going to stay in hybrid. I know that too because I have 2 little grandkids there, so I heard the full story. But there's also Goffstown is going to stay in hybrid. Bedford is staying in hybrid. One district that chose not to is going remote is Londonderry. Manchester has not made a decision. And Nashua, again, those two are kind of our sister schools, if you will. Nashua is still in remote in their high school. So just to give you an idea, what's everybody else doing around this holiday period? Because that's really the focus of tonight's meeting, is trying to give you some guidance around that decision and making a recommendation for the board on Thursday night. So I took the liberty of making a recommendation to you tonight, and I'm going to recommend that we continue with our hybrid model through the holiday season and beyond. A lot of families are asking about, can we transfer between remote and hybrid to remote, vice versa. And we have all agreed that we will open opportunities for that in January when we return, because we know that some people have expressed an interest in going to hybrid, and we just, when you start balancing those classes and you're trying to align the number of students with the staff that you have, you just, one student here and one student there, you just can't eliminate that teacher from one group and put him in another. So we decided to do all of that planning between now and January 4th, when we return from our holiday break. I think, if I'm right, the last slide is pretty simple. Questions?
In a minute, I'm going to have you be my person too once we get into it.
Kathleen, can I?
Yeah, I don't know. Barb? Yeah.
Okay, so very quickly, I'll ask the first question, and then I'm going to go to Danielle and then to David. So in looking at this, so two major concerns have come in the mail to me. One is consistency. It's hard to go back and forth, and even if people don't like the decision or whatever, if they know what's coming, they can plan for it. So making a decision as soon as possible does make sense, and trying to stick with it. I do feel, and I wonder about not making some extra concession for parents who know they're going to travel and have concerns, to say, okay, over the vacation, I'd like to be remote. I'd like to have my child home for the next 6 weeks. If there's any sort of thought process around accommodating those parents, even if it isn't an ideal situation, I don't feel that we have the right to say, well, you just have to wait till January. In the meantime, keep coming. It can't be answered now, but I put it on your list.
I will. I just wrote it down.
Okay. So that just jumps out for me.
And remember, if they do travel, they still have a 14 days. That essential piece is relative to teachers and staff, not to students and families.
A couple of districts, people I know that teach in other districts, if they know families are traveling, they prepare a couple of weeks' worth of work for those students. So they have things to work on when they get back and can't come in. So if we know our plan, then we can be proactive in making sure our students are receiving materials and connections and such. Danielle and then David.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions, but my first one is, I didn't see an update on the number of families that are traveling. Do you have those numbers?
Yes, we do. Sorry. Just want to make sure I have the right. So outside during Thanksgiving, we have a total of 233 people that indicated they were traveling. Of that 233, 66 are traveling outside of New England during the Thanksgiving holiday. Not a lot. We saw very small numbers for people traveling. So that's, again, I think that's fairly small. During the holiday recess, we had 323 total traveling, but of that 323, 131.
And do you know about how many responded to the survey?
Oh, boy.
Sorry.
I think Donna took some of those statistics. Donna, can you help?
No, just a minute.
1,782 children, and the staff one was 681 staff.
Thank you. I have more, but I'll let somebody else go. Come
Well,
back
you can
to
ask
me.
all your
That's okay. If it doesn't come up, I'll go again.
All right. All right, David.
I know the rules have changed around quarantine. Do you expect them to continue to change?
I think they are going to change. I asked this week, I called the commissioner and asked the commissioner for the latest update on travel, and I've yet to receive it. But my understanding from a very reliable source that travel document is ready for release, and it hasn't been released yet. And I think that's where we're going to see some. But again, the virus changes every day. That's the problem. I think everybody's afraid to, I mean, I put out a note one day and things change the next. As quickly as I might put out some communication, it changes. I'm sure they feel the same way, David.
Yeah, I've experienced some of that. And so let me be clear, for the staff, if they're traveling, they're considered as essential employees, and they will be asked to come back and teach if they're in the hybrid model, unless they're teaching in your remote model. But the students themselves, if they travel, it'll be quarantined for a couple of weeks. Is that where we stand now?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Gina.
Okay. So, unfortunately, I have a whole slew of questions.
Go for it.
So, I know that you mentioned you spoke with other school districts, and you told us that some were continuing and some were going remote. I just looked up the top 7 school districts by size. Do you know what Pinkerton is doing?
They're going to make their decision December 1st.
Okay. Wow. That's not helpful. Exeter?
My understanding is they're still in remote, and they'll stay in remote, I believe. Now, I'm not exactly sure, but I believe that they'll switch over after the new year. But boy, they've been a district too that's been challenged.
Okay. Manchester?
Hasn't made a decision.
Yeah, that was in the
Portsmouth?
news.
I don't know what Portsmouth's doing. They were not on my group
Yeah.
list.
I know that they're geographically a little different.
Right now, they're in hybrid.
Okay. Rochester?
Rochester has gone remote.
Dover?
I don't know.
Okay. Okay. So, and I think, I have a hearing loss, so I think I heard you say, we are going to ask teachers basically not to quarantine because they're essential workers. Is that correct?
That's correct, unless one of those criteria that I read on my PowerPoint that they meet. If they have a symptom when they return, then they have to quarantine. If they have a family member who has a positive result, they have to quarantine. I mean, that whole list that I presented on one of those slides.
Right. Yep. The exceptions.
Yeah, the exceptions. So, the same rules apply if they come back and they can't meet one of those exceptions.
Okay. And so one of the exceptions is they cannot conduct essential functions remotely. We're saying they can't conduct those functions remotely, correct?
I'm not sure I understand your question, Gina.
On the list of exceptions, one
Yeah.
of them is if you have symptoms, obviously you have to stay home.
That's correct.
But one of them is the employee cannot conduct essential functions remotely. We're saying that we cannot have those teachers be remote. Is that
Right, but
Is
if
that-
they,
If they're a hybrid team.
yeah, it means that we need to have that teacher, they just can't stay home because of a 14-day quarantine. But if they have a positive,
No, I'm not, I'm not talking about positive. I'm saying,
Donna, will you put that, can you put that slide up again
Yeah.
for me? So everybody can see
sorry, because
it.
you can't see my screen.
Yeah,
but I'm looking at it, so.
I have it in front of me, but I thought it was helpful if the folks see it.
So I'm looking at,
Yeah, let me grab it.
I can't point, it's, the employee cannot conduct essential functions remotely. How, if we have, let's say, 10 teachers in the district that have to quarantine because they have symptoms, how close are we to not being able to keep the schools open if we have 10 or 20 faculty that can't come back?
Right, we assess that every day. I don't know, I won't know that. And I may have to determine that we don't have enough staff. Right now, I have enough staff. Right now, we're functioning. So I can only go on the data that I have. Yes, I know some people are traveling, but will they fall out of these exceptions?
I'm sorry, I think you misunderstand my question. If we know, for example, we have people come back and they say, I have a sore throat, or I'm running a fever, or I just found out my cousin is positive, and we spent Christmas. How many of those teachers can we have be out and still have sufficient staff to keep our schools open safely?
Two things could happen. They could remote, which happens right now. I'm a teacher. I didn't feel good for whatever reasons. I don't know. I hurt my back. Okay, let's not talk about a symptom. Let's talk about hurting my back. Okay. And I can't come in. I can't.
No, not okay. We're talking about COVID. We're not talking about someone who hurt
But
their
I'm
back.
trying to give you an example. I'm trying to give you an example that right now, when I have a teacher that calls in now with a back that's injured, we get a sub. So the same thing would happen if a teacher calls in and says, I can't come in, I have a symptom.
Right.
That's happening right now, Gina.
I get that, but what I'm asking you is, let's say we have 20 people who come back from holiday and say, I traveled and I can't come in. What's our cushion is what I'm asking you, Kathleen. What is our cushion in faculty?
That's 2 weeks of needing a sub. She's really asking about the 2-week period. They have to quarantine because XYZ.
Right.
We have 20 teachers that need to quarantine.
If all of those 20 teachers are at the high school, then I have to go to the high school, has to go remote. I
Okay.
don't have enough staff.
That's
If
what I'm
it's
asking
20
you-
teachers
yeah.
spread across the district, that's a different story.
It's
Okay,
easier to manage if there's 2 or 3 teachers here
Right.
and 1 here.
Because remember, you have permanent subs in your buildings. You have folks that we hire as regular substitutes that come in that aren't permanent subs. They're just called in to help, and they do. So we do have that staff. But if we reach a point, Gina, where the numbers are too high in one particular building, I don't have any choice but to shut down and go to remote, fully remote.
sorry, that's what I'm asking, is what is our cushion?
Next on your list, do you have more?
Well, I'd like to go back to looking at our matrices, but that may be later in the conversation.
Danielle, what's next for you?
Sure. So my family has decided that we're changing our normal Thanksgiving plans, and we're all staying home, the 5 of us. So if we're staying hybrid, how do I know that when I send my son back to Runlet, that he's safe, that the other kids traveled and didn't tell anybody? Or, I'm a glass half full kind of girl, but when it comes to my family, it's a different situation, I think. And, we're people who have really followed the rules of COVID since March, and it's really frustrating to sort of get to this point again where things are wishy-washy and that, our family might not be safe based on the decisions of other people. So, to sort of see these slides really sort of set me back a little bit, because I thought that this was being brought to us originally because we had concerns about so many kids traveling And when we look at those family numbers, that is still sort of alarming to me, the number of people who are traveling. And, you know, people have the right to do what they want to do, but I also have the right, I think, to know that my son is as safe as possible, my daughter is as safe as possible when we get to these different public places where they should be safe. So I guess that's it's a statement and a question in one, is how do we know that people who aren't traveling?
I don't. I think that happens right now.
Hypothetical, I guess.
I don't know that, Danielle. I have no way of, you know, I can't, you know, query every youngster, did you go to New York?
Right.
We're not going to do that. But don't think that happens now?
I don't think to the extent that they're going on holiday now during the school year. I think when there's a designated break from school that it's a bigger concern. I think sorry, can I ask one more thing?
Yeah, go.
So another question I had is, I know a lot of people were sort of thinking that we might go this way, that we might go remote for the holidays, and if they are having second thoughts about wanting to keep their children in hybrid, is there any way for them to make that switch? It sounded like not until January.
Well, like I said, you have to understand that it's very complex. We've created these groups. We have a hybrid group and we have a remote group. And if you start switching back and forth, if you take kids out of hybrid and put them in remote, now you've got all the teachers getting new students. They've already got 20 kids in their class. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. You're tipping the scales.
And I understand the complexity. I completely understand the complexities of that. I guess maybe I'm heading toward your matrix question. I don't know. Just as the numbers increase, it just feels like to be stuck in one spot is tough.
You're right. That question about the matrix has come up a lot. I mean, you know, you're not following your matrix. And the problem with that is that we don't have this incredible transmission in our schools. We've been able to control it, and schools are considered one of the safest places. You know, we have bars and restaurants and grocery stores, and people are out and about all the time. Our schools are safe considering the numbers. So, I mean, I have to use some of that data, and in order to evaluate whether we keep the kids in school with their teachers in that environment. And again, I base it on whatever we get for information. You know, I'd like the board to consider the other issue that is really out there, and we need to talk about it a little bit, and that's, you know, the equity issues and having kids come into school, and the parents who need to work. And you know, I'm not telling you that we're a babysitting service or a child care service. We're not. But our parents and our families depend on us in terms of the children in school for at least 2 days, and they can manage that whole system. And they need to be at work, and those are our clerks, and those are our, you know, public works folks, and those are all of our workers that we depend on day in and day out. And so we need, you know, I think about those too. It isn't a clean thing, you know. What about all those youngsters whose families are working? Do they stay home and then they're unattended? I don't have an answer for that. Are some families able to attend to their children at home because they're lucky they're remote learning, right? They're at home, and so it works for them. But there's an awful lot of our families that is not the case.
I want to quickly address that, then I'll go to Gina for the matrix question if you want to ask it at that time, and then I'll go to Tom. I saw your hand. So I had several conversations with Kathleen, which I have to say as a board member is incredibly refreshing. I spent my first 6 years on the board and never had one conversation with the superintendent about anything. So I want to thank you for picking up the phone all the time. I also talked to teachers, a couple of whom I see here, and I go back to economics, which I was terrible at, but there's this thing called opportunity cost, and you have to weigh the value of each side. And so we have COVID, and families getting sick, and Grammys and Grandpas passing away. And then we have all the unheard from families. I have close contact with 2 families right now who are just barely holding on. And one mother, in tears, says the only day I can get anything done or have 10 minutes to myself are Tuesdays and Fridays, because her little ones are in school at that time. She has a very difficult time on the other days getting her kids to sit, getting them to focus, not because she's not a talented mother, but because her life is such that it's chaos all the time. So these kids, in my mind, would be far better off in a building with other kids and teachers, having in-person education. Yes, is there a risk? I can't even go into my head about the risks. We all know my medical background. But I have to ask myself as a board member, looking at 6 cases, there's 40,000 people in Concord, maybe 45. If we had 150 or 200 cases, I could see it. So I think of these kids, this family, and to me, their ability to be in school is just as important as Gina's ability to have her children remote, if that's what needs to happen. There's no difference here. So in my frustration, and all of us, I think, and how gray this is, I think we have to look at all of those things. It can't just be my way based on this situation. It can't just be Gina's way based on her situation. Somewhere in the middle is a balance for us to best serve our children. I just think that's, it's such a gray area. Nothing black and white about this at all. The matrix is a perfect example. When it was put together, it made sense for where we were at the time. We have higher numbers now than we had most of the spring, and we have 6 students since September that have gotten COVID in our district. So higher numbers, we're still doing okay. That tells me maybe we could have been in school in the spring. It's hard to say. How do you look at it? How do you spin the number? How do you measure time? All the things that we attach numbers and importance to can be easily manipulated. Do I like that our matrix is all red and we're still in school? No. But when I really look at it, does it make sense? In my mind, yes. That's my opinion. So I think I'm just trying to acknowledge for anyone that's listening and all of us in our thought process, nothing easy about this, but we have to look at all of these things. And the well-being, mental well-being, physical well-being of some of our kids, all of it has to be factored in as well. I feel very strongly about that. I don't know what it looks like, but we can't forget about it. Anyway, Gina.
So, yeah, I go back to the matrix because...
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Is that one working? There we go. We ended up with these matrices after long and really, I think, heartfelt conversation, compromise, listening to our community, trying to get information from our state. All of that merged together into these matrices that I think we presented to our community as a way for them to understand how we were making decisions and what those decisions would be based on the data, not based on our emotions, based on the data. If I look at the community transmission matrix, and I don't know if we can put it up or whether it's even important, one of the 3 variables in that matrix is in the substantial rate. Not all of them. One of them's minimal, one of them's moderate, one of them's substantial. The other matrix, or chart, I guess, is a school impact. One of them is low, one of them is I don't know, and one of them is critical. Now, when you take those 2 charts and you put them into the matrix, no matter how you count that, we're remote. And I understand that we have a very low in-school transmission rate. That was 1 of 6 variables, 1. We have 2 either high or critical, which means that according to the matrices that we established, that we said, this is what we're going to do. This is what we said to our community. You can trust us because this is what we're going to do, and this is based on data, not on what Gina wants, which is to protect every kid from every single scrape and bump and heartbreak in the universe, and we all know that's impossible. But this is what we're doing based on data. And as soon as we crossed into that zone, we said, oh, sorry, we're not going to follow that. We crossed the line that we drew in the sand and said, we're not going to pay attention to that. Let me tell you, I have been overwhelmed with people in my community who want to know just what the bleep we're doing after we pass these matrices and now we're not following them. So I'd like to know, why are we not following them? Why are we now saying, oh, those details don't actually apply to us? We put them in there, but we don't really mean it. We only care about our school transmission, which is low, and that's great, and I'm glad our kids are not getting sick at school, but that's not the only variable. I'd like to know why we're not following the matrices that we all agreed we'd follow. And anyone, feel free to answer that one.
Because there are many points of data, and I think you said it. And I think one of it was the transmission in the schools.
Yes, but that's one of 6.
I understand that. I understand that. Often some of the numbers, especially in the beginning, were driven by specific places like nursing homes. Now, I acknowledge the fact that the numbers of cases have grown across all lines now. It's more than just nursing homes, but initially that was the case. We saw high numbers in nursing homes. And now we have community transmission at a greater level. Just this past week, we had conversations with Dr. Noble, and we have listened to Dr. Chan, and both of them have indicated that it was appropriate for us to be in school under the plan that we are currently having. So based on some of those recommendations, I've stayed with it because we only had 1 out of the 3 categories on that matrix that we used back in September. And things have changed. I get that. And perhaps that matrix needs to change. The numbers are the same numbers now in Merrimack County that they were in May, but we're doing much better. In May, we didn't go out. We didn't do anything. We were cloistered, and now we're out. We're doing all the distancing. We're doing the masks. We're taking care of business. So we're dealing with it, and so that's why I recommended that we continue with hybrid.
Gina, what's the one that's at critical? Do you have that in front of you?
Yeah, absolutely. So in the community transmission chart, PCR is minimal. Community infections are substantial, and hospitalizations are in the moderate.
Okay.
Then you go to the school impact chart.
Got it.
Transmission within the school is low, and I give kudos to that. That's great, but our kids aren't living here.
Right.
Student absenteeism, I don't know where that stands because I don't know how many kids do we count the kids that are remote by choice, but that's not illness, because they're not coming in. So I don't know how we do the rate of student absenteeism. I don't know I don't know. And then the staff capacity is critical.
And so staff capacity is how many are able to...
What happens do we have enough staff to be running the school? Which right now is yes, but if we had 10 people out,
right,
the answer is no. So we've now got substantial and critical.
Right. Thank you.
And it doesn't require all 6 to be in the high, just 1 of each to be in the remote. Right. Actually, not even 1 of each. If you go to the matrices, community infections being substantial means we should be in remote, according to what the state originally suggested in those matrices.
Thank you. Not only for my clarification, I want to make sure anyone watching and listening has a clear understanding of where these critical and substantial areas are.
Right. And those charts and matrices are available on the SAU website. Great. This is what we did in previous committee meetings where we had all the charts and stuff.
Wouldn't it be nice if the transmission areas could go remote, so everyone has to eat their dinner and have their drinks home, remote from the bar, and we can all go to school?
Unfortunately, that's every county in this state except Cheshire,
Yeah.
is substantial. And the numbers are not turning around. And in fact, if you look at what the governor said, if you look at what Dr. Chan said, they say the numbers are going to go up even more.
Thomas,
Thank you.
you need a microphone, dear.
Thank you, Barbara. So one of the things that I'm sitting here realizing, and I have realized over the many, many emails that I've received, and it's like reading an article about some sort of malady. As soon as I get done reading, I know I have it. It feels like it anyway. If I hear someone say we shouldn't go back because of these reasons, I believe it sincerely. If I hear someone say we should go back for these reasons, I believe that sincerely. And I really do go back and forth, and I try to separate out what my personal and social feelings are versus my business sense. One of the things that I've come to the grips with, though, is that as an educator, I've always been able to fix most things. You know, when I taught first grade and kids came in, you know, with wearing one boot in the winter, you know, I went out and found the other boot. I mean, you know, we fix things. That's what we do. COVID's taught me that we can't fix everything. And in this situation particularly, we can't. We can't make everybody happy, and that's too bad. And none of us likes it. The other point I want to make is that Danielle's point is that she feels uneasy about sending her kids back to school. And absolutely. We have staff who are feeling that way too, and they have written to us. And I think it behooves Superintendent Murphy and her building principal team to go back to reassure staff as much as they can about why we're here and what got us here. Why are we still in school if, you know, it's not safe? And there's some work that needs to be done there, I think. And then, and this is all very random, I understand. Back to the very one or two slides we had, and I don't need to re-see it, but we had an 83% average daily attendance in hybrid or remote. I can't remember now. I should have written it down. I wrote down the 83. But either way, we have, what, 800, 900 kids at Runlet? 900. So we've got 72 kids a day on average who are not in school, who are not participating. And I think that's scary and alarming, and I think we need to take, you know, do some work about that. And maybe if, in terms of it being a, well, I'll leave it at that. We need to look at it and see if we can fix it. Thank you.
Kathleen, can I ask an attendance clarification? So he was referring to the chart with the 90, the average attendance. Is that just hybrid, or is that?
No, I gave you both.
So it's the whole district?
Right. I
Okay,
gave
so
you
it includes
the attendance for all the kids in hybrid and all of the youngsters in remote.
So Gina, does that clarify your attendance question as well?
No,
Okay.
because the question is how many people are absent because they're ill?
Oh, I see, right, not just not showing
Not just
up or-
not just physically present, but how many are ill? And some of the kids that are remote are not ever going to be, hopefully, ill because they're not going anywhere.
Right, got it. David, go. Thank you.
Kathleen, in an average year, what percentage of students are absent?
The attendance in Concord is very good, as you know, and it averages around 94, 95%.
Okay. Thank you.
Which most of our schools were. The middle
Which
school
most
was
of the schools were, except for the number at Runlet,
Yeah.
at the middle school.
middle school.
Yeah, I always obviously asked the question because we want to compare
Yeah, that's one,
apples to apples.
actually,
right.
Donna and I talked about that this afternoon when we tried to get as current numbers as we could, and so we wanted to look at that. We were not sure about their reporting, but we don't want to put any conjecture in that. I gave you the raw numbers, that's what it is.
I just want to clarify, though, I think Mr. Curto said 83, but it's 89 for hybrid and 85 for remote. So
At Renlet?
yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you can see we're off a little bit. If it's 89 and you've been accustomed to around 94, 95.
Well, and it's an easier attendance to take. You're looking at a student's face, so that student's here. In remote, sometimes kids can log in and not be there, or not log in and get their work done. Attendance becomes such a shaky piece in a remote
For
setting.
instance, a good example in remote is that we have families that aren't able to have their children during the school day because they're working. So what I've heard from some moms and dads is that they work with their youngster early in the morning, then they work, and then in the late afternoon they spend time with their child doing their schoolwork from 3:30 or 4 o'clock. So that often can be a little bit of a problem for some of the youngsters. The other issue that we face with remote is the screen time issue. We've been dealing with that. I get a lot of emails about the concerns around screen time, and I know that the principals have been working with the teachers to help them, realize it's an instruction, and then the children can work on their own. They don't have to be on the screen. So those are the challenges that we face with remote.
Barb?
Gina?
And just because someone's not on at remote doesn't mean that they're sick.
No, right.
So that's why I
Right.
wanted to,
Yes.
we don't know how many people are not there.
Right.
Because they're ill.
Right, exactly. Which an in-person person, it's much more obvious. If you're not coming, you have to say why. Right. So I'm going to
guess,
make... I'm sorry, go.
No, just that I'd be curious to know what the average attendance is around the districts in the state for, what are we comparing to in terms of numbers? When we went remote in the spring, we had 85% attendance. I thought that was pretty good given how challenging it was. And so I think it's important to look at numbers in the context of what we're putting up with and what we're dealing with. It's challenging. And as you say, it's not just a matter of whether kids want to be there or not. It's circumstances within the family, other variables. So it makes it hard. Those numbers are hard to really, identify why they're there. Thank you.
Pam?
Thank you. I've gotten asked, what would the remote model be if the board decided to go remote? Would it be what we did in the fall, or would it be a variation on that? And I think high school parents generally liked the remote model in the fall, some more than others, and elementary school parents had a lot of problems with the remote model in the fall. So I think that's a question I've been getting.
Is this on? Okay, I'm sorry. Our expectation would be we would go back to the remote model that we were using in the fall, which people continue to tweak, but it would be a 4-day. It wouldn't be like the 2 cohort situation. It would be the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then Wednesday is kind of that part remote.
But students would stay in their same groups, right?
Yeah, no changes of classes. And,
Right.
and I just want to clarify that when we say people moving from hybrid to remote or remote to hybrid, at the high school, at grades 7 through 12, there aren't separate classes that are remote and separate that are hybrid like there are. But K-6, there's separate classes. So that's what's a little different. Changing in the upper grades, as I was talking to Mr. Reardon today, that's actually a fairly easy thing to do even now, because it's the same teacher and the same class and the same kids. It's a little bit different at the elementary, as you remember, K-6, because we have separate teachers who have their own remote class. Everybody in the class is remote.
Right. But should we end up going remote, it would just be where they're receiving their instruction at every grade level.
That's exactly right.
They're just doing it all at
Yep,
home instead.
That's right. They would stay exactly where they were. They wouldn't switch teachers or anything like that.
Right, right. Pamela?
And the CRTC and the special categories of students, you would envision that they would stay in school?
Right, I believe that our remote would be similar, would be the same September-wise that way. But let me have Kathleen answer that more specifically, please.
I alluded to the equity issue. before, and I'm very concerned. And I know I recommended providing for our most vulnerable students in a face-to-face. But what makes I question myself on this, so if it sounds like I'm changing my mind on it, I am. But what's the difference between saying it's okay for everyone else to be remote, but special ed and 504 and ELL students come to school? If it's not safe for everybody, it's not safe for them either. I guess I want to be clear about that. And yet, Tom's alluded to it. I mean, as an educator, the fact that I can stand here and say that I don't want to deliver a service to a youngster who needs extra help is just like, it's heartbreaking. You can't do that. But yet, think about the equity issue. It's okay for everybody else to be home because it's not safe. We have too many cases, but yet it's okay for special ed, ELL, 504, and homeless students to come to our school. So I'm struggling with that one.
Yeah.
Thank you, that's helpful. And to be clear, I believe that the matrix needs to be updated. I'm not sure I think we need to go full remote, but I think it's important to know what both options look like. And I know this question has been asked, but I think there are families who, I'm actually impressed with the number of families who are planning to stay home and the low percentage of that. I think we should be encouraging that. I mean, the guidance is not to travel, it's not to gather in large groups, as sad as that is. But I do think we need to know what the plan is for families that have to either have to quarantine or just not comfortable, and how we help accommodate them, and also how do we help teachers, especially at the high school level, if we stay at hybrid, who are managing students in both platforms at the same time.
So 6 through 12, we are managing both platforms at the same time. I mean, we don't have separate remote teachers, so those youngsters are remoting in. They're remoting into their classes. And as you know, we've tried to hire extra hands so that we can help teachers so that they can keep an eye on the students that are remoting in, as well as the students that they have face-to-face. And that's not easy. Let me tell you something. These teachers are been masters and working very, very hard. So I just want to say that. The challenge is the younger ones. You know, how do you do your reading groups? You're teaching reading, you're teaching phonics, you're teaching basic math. How do you do that with youngsters? And remember now, we're talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9-year-olds, all right? Please keep in mind, you know, there's tons of energy, right? And you have to keep them focused, right? It's so important in the work, and the teacher's trying to watch the 10, 12 he or she have in front of them, as well as the students on. So that's our challenge, is how do we provide for those youngsters that would have to remote if they went to New York or wherever, right, over the vacation, and how are we going to provide? Now, we do have seats. We know we have seats. We have seats in remote. One grade level at 4th grade level we know is very tight, so we may have to open up another remote class. But we talked about it today in that we have additional seats. So let's say you decide to do remote and you're at grade 2. I'm just picking on you. And you want your son to go to remote, we have a spot in his grade level. 4th grade is our tough one. Donna, you want to add to that? Donna's been working with the principals on this.
At a principals meeting this morning, we talked about this very issue. What would we do if we were still in school in person, but we had people that were traveling? It happens now, by the way. It does happen. Columbus Day weekend. There have been all sorts of times that these things have happened for various reasons when kids can't come in, quarantining or isolating, whatever the different reason. And the principals feel strongly that they would want to work with each family to make the best choice. Some families might want to have asynchronous work. They might want to get the work, and the teacher meets with the student every day. They have some students that do that now, individually, who had to stay home for some period of time. Or it might be that they will Zoom into the classroom, even if they're in kindergarten. We've had people try that at the elementary school, and they're willing to work with each family. That was what they said. If they were here today, that's what they would say. They want to work with the families during that period of time to make it work for each of those children.
Thank you. Yes, Jack? Oh, Janita. Sometimes you have to wave furiously at me or I don't see you.
So I
Bring your mic right up, honey.
I have quite a bit. So I know that a lot of students that I've talked to, that they're, a lot of them really feel strongly about going remote, and especially after seeing a lot of the statistics, I feel like that seems reasonable, but I also understand after hearing Danielle speak about her child in middle school, and my mom works at the elementary school, and I do think that ELL kids and special ed kids, I understand where there would be, where you said that if we're not going back, then they shouldn't either because they would be just as much as risk. But I think the difference is that they're already at a disadvantage because, the whole English process is harder. And for me, I have a 504, I don't remember, but for me, it was really important to be able to have that contact with the teacher to really understand something. And I did a meeting with one of my teachers, and it was a lot harder to do that math over Zoom because we couldn't look at it together and solve that problem. We had to figure out all these different solutions with it, which is a good thing to be, doing these problem solving. But I just feel like we need to figure out a way that we can realize that there are these kids that are already at a disadvantage, and this whole pandemic is putting so many kids at even more of a disadvantage. Even if they're already at a good state, it's just a lot harder. And yeah, that's where I have to.
Janita, I actually want to piggyback on you for a minute. I was going to speak, and then she's addressing it. So we talk about our disadvantaged children who are already at a step back because they need English support, or they need special ed support, or they're homeless and can't do remote in a van. So when you look at, but the other side is right. If it's not safe for me, why is it safe for them? And it brings me back to that poster that shows like equality, and these three little boys are watching a baseball game and they all have a box to stand on, but only one of them can see over because he doesn't need the box. And then you have justice, where you have the tall boy with no box and the medium boy with one and the little boy with two, and they all can see over the fence. So yes, we have a situation where children may or may not be safe, but if we're going to create a program that is best for almost everybody, but not good enough for a significant part of our population, I think we need to analyze that a little bit. I'm teaching at VLAX again right now, and they just started an elementary program. And the startling reality that these little ones at home with capable parents, I don't mean smarter than others, I just mean they have the ability to be home with their kids, sitting in an online school, working with their kids all day. It's a very, very specific portion of our population, not so much defined by race, but defined by money and jobs and education of the parents. And I think so many of our kids that have these intrinsic supports before they come into our schools will weather this. And the quiet ones that we talk about, the ones we don't hear about, the ones that need to sit next to their teacher to really get it. How do we teach those kids safely? This is when these questions can become looming and huge, but really important. If a Band-Aid is all I need, that's fine. But if she needs a brace, then she needs the brace and I need the Band-Aid. And then we both can learn. So that's a good point. Thank you, Janita.
But I think we also need to remember that parents can choose for their special needs kids whether they want their kids to come in to get the extra support or not.
But if we went
And
fully, right. She was saying perhaps not, that's all. That if it's not safe for me, who doesn't have an IEP, why is it safe for Susie with
I'm
one?
not saying it's safe, but I think that's the parent's choice to do that balancing act. I'm not saying it's intrinsically more safe for a kid that maybe has
But it
complex
has to be-
medical
it has to
issues,
be
and
here
it's
for them
not
to
safer.
choose. It has to be here for them to be able to choose.
Right.
Okay. Anyone else sitting? So Jim, do you have anything you'd like to contribute, or are you happy to watch right now? Because I'm just going to do board members. So I know Liza's here. Liza, do you have anything you'd like to contribute or ask?
Thanks for asking. I'm all set for now.
Okay. Anyone else? Board member Wise? All right, so my next invitation would be for people who are sitting here in front of me. Now, I'm going to go back to a couple of summers ago when people who are on the board the summer after the whole incident with Howie Leong, and we had all of these committees, and Mr. Parker made an observation that we're talking about policies that affect teachers and students, and not a single teacher or a single student was on any of those, sitting at any of those tables. And it was a pretty eye-opening reality that sometimes as boards, we decide we have all this power to make decisions and the people they affect aren't here. It's why I invited Janita and Alice to come at our board meeting last week. I just thought if we're talking about school, who better to ask than students who are in school? So I see there are a couple of teachers here. I wish this place was full of teachers, because as scary as it can be to speak publicly about what you think, I'm not the one that's going to either have a bunch of my kids home or sending them off to school or be teaching. So I don't know if there's anyone sitting here that would like to ask a question or share, but it's just helpful to the board to hear from the people directly impacted. Come.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ali Maltese, and I want to thank, just going to tilt this up, I'm tall. I just want to thank you guys for all your hard work, and also welcome Pam Walsh to the board. So I'm going to speak on behalf, because I am a special needs parent, and my son goes to the developmental preschool, and I will tell you, based on my experience, and this just could be his preschool and his team, which we're really lucky to have, when my son was remote, they really did go above and beyond. They provided us all the materials, they Zoom meet, they called, they emailed, they did everything they could on their end to really make sure my son can learn. And even though it was a challenge, they still asked, what else can we do? How else can we help? So it definitely can be done, and I've seen it firsthand. And we did decide later on that hybrid was good for him, and it is good right now, but I've seen good on both sides. And coming from my healthcare experience, and my husband, a frontline nurse, that, you know, the risk is there for us every day. You know, when I was running for school board, I was telling people, it's nice that we have the accessibility for outside right now. You know, my backyard is Abbott Dunnan and Runlet. So I see the kids outside, I see them doing classrooms outside, but we're gonna lose that accessibility when we move into these colder days, and we're already in flu season. There's only so much space we can use, and during this pandemic, it's like a domino effect. We're living in a very uncertain time, very challenging year for everybody, and I can go into depth with the mental health crisis right now, but I mean, this pandemic has affected everybody on many different levels, from children to teenagers to adults to elderly. I would just like you to possibly think about the next coming months when we have no choice but to be inside. And I kind of want to echo what Danielle was saying, because I understand as a mom, anybody can say, oh, I didn't steal a pack of gum, or I didn't travel anywhere, and I understand that happened, and it's happening now. But right now we have the accessibility of being outside still, and you know how cold New Hampshire can get, where we're not going to be as outside as much. We're going to be packed inside. But I can tell you, I have seen an amazing team work with my son, making sure remote and hybrid does work, and it's really nice for the parents to have that option. And I know whatever Beaver Meadow's doing right now with my son, I hopefully, you know, it's followed with the other schools, with other little ones, because we all know they touch everything, they put everything in their mouths, and with my son, because he has autism, they really sent us packages. They were calling, they were emailing, just to make sure he was meeting all the requirements, and thank God he was, because he's soaring. So thank you, everybody, for trying your hardest, and I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ally.
I think I was going to, before you, Mike. Do you think I was going to speak? Gina, make sure you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Thanks.
I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but I had a couple of things I wanted to say. First of all, I want to compliment everyone behind the scenes for what they're doing to try to make this all work. Kathleen, you've been great to work with. I appreciate the fact that you're very available constantly, even on the weekends. It's been really helpful. I'd like to compliment all the administrators. Mike, great job at the high school. And I'd like to compliment all the teachers who are doing extraordinary things right now. It's hard to really put it into words because they make it up every day. They do a wonderful job of doing that. So first thing I wanted to talk about is attendance. We do have attendance figures, but those figures are sometimes not what they seem. Okay, so we have, for instance, this week I have 2 special ed students who are quarantining for 2 weeks. So I lost those kids for 2 weeks. And if they don't log on remotely for me, then they're not going to get any instruction for 2 weeks. We're trying to put mechanisms to send work home for those kids, but it's timely and it's hard to do on the fly. The other attendance figures for elementary, for instance, is the kids that are in remote situations oftentimes sign in the morning. They're in attendance. They get marked as in attendant, but throughout the day they fade out. Things happen. The family goes shopping, so they're not getting the full day of remote. The other thing that was brought up tonight is that the idea of moving kids in and out of classrooms is very disruptive. So we had to kind of put a stop to the kids that were joining remote classrooms because the numbers were jumping up to 25 and 26 kids. And it's hard to have some sort of classroom decorum of any kind and have kids keep going in and out. I think the same is going to be true for hybrid. You've established classroom routines and so forth, then all of a sudden you have new kids moving in. And so I don't think it works for either side. And the last thing I'd like to say, I think it's more doable at the high school to have Zoom going on while you're doing in person. But at the elementary level, the nature of how you teach elementary kids, it's really going to be, it's not going to give what those kids that are getting an in-person contact, it's going to take away from what they get on a given day, and because teachers are going to be distracted for what's going on in the Zoom class. So I know you got some hard decisions to make. Today we did a Survey Monkey to the teachers to see where they stood on remote or hybrid, staying hybrid. And Survey Monkey, unless you pay for it, only gives you 100 respondents. It came in at around 78% teachers wanted to go remote. But I don't think that's an accurate figure because I know in my school at Broken Ground, I would say the opposite is probably true. There's only a few teachers that would like to go remote. So keeping that in mind, I think the CA membership is probably split somewhere down the middle, maybe a little to one side or the other. But I think whatever you decide, we'll make it work, we'll work with you, and we'll figure it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
Not that I don't care about everyone's input, but when you have a special ed teacher standing up and telling you how it is, it's easier, at least for me, a teacher at heart always, to listen to. So Mike, I really appreciate the fact that you came down and shared. It's important. Anyone else in front of me that would like to come say anything? All right, so Danielle, this is where I'll need your eyes.
Okay.
So if you're listening from home and you have input or questions, this is your chance. I will ask that you try to stay as concise as you can. I know it's difficult. I will also ask people, if somebody says exactly what you were going to say, please come on and just explain, yes, I agreed with Frank on everything he said. So that should we get going late into the night, we can hear everybody without hearing often one or two things over and over again. Let's just try to be efficient if it gets to that point. So we're working on it.
Yeah, I was going to put a public comment thing so people, because I've seen the chat and they don't know if you making a public comment section?
Yeah, no, so
I
yeah,
just want to push the slide so people just chime in, that's all they see.
okay,
They don't
perfect.
need to see all our pretty faces.
Yeah.
So I just want to do it quick.
Thank you. So formulate your questions while we're getting set up technically here, and I'm looking forward to what everyone has to say.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what they're seeing. I just want to make sure that's what they're seeing at home. So if they chime in, yep. So if you want, I'll get started. I'll start with the hand raises first. Is that okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
All right. First one is Jody. This is public comment. If you would unmute yourself, state your first and last name, where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Jody McLaughlin. I'm from Concord. I have a daughter who attends Abbott Downing. And I just have a couple questions. I'll keep it quick. The first is I can't find on the DHS website where it lists teachers as essential. I saw the list, but I don't see education listed there. So I was curious about that, if someone could show me where that is. And then back to Gina's question about the criteria to waive the quarantine requirement. My understanding from reading that is that all of them have to be met. And one of the requirements is that the job can't be done remotely. And it seems that it is being done remotely for some teachers. So I think that automatically negates the ability to waive the quarantine requirement. And then my other question is, that there's that concern about elementary school students. They can't go from hybrid to remote and then back to hybrid because we're worried about the pods and keeping the pods kind of together and, other germs out of the pods. But if we're worried about that, why aren't we worried about travel when, a student in my daughter's pod could be traveling and being exposed and then coming back to the classroom? Isn't that the same or worse than the other, the other situation? And those are my questions.
Thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
So,
Yeah, Gina, go.
so I also could not find initially the critical infrastructure workforce list, but it is in fact there. So if you go to, or if you Google New Hampshire, oh, that's a U.S. If you do NHDHHS and then critical infrastructure, it takes you to an explanation of what the critical infrastructure is, and then you have to go to government employees, and then under government employees, there's a subsection that is educational. Does that help?
That was for you, Jody.
Yes, it does help, but I still am hanging on to that. The job can be done remotely, so that negates the ability to waive the quarantine requirement.
I wasn't going there. I was just trying to help you find where it said K through 12.
Thank you. I will look there. I do appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay, Jack.
Next one with the hand raised, Angela Nelson. If you could state your first name, last name, and where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Yep, my name is Angela Nelson, and I am from Concord. I have a kindergartner and a 4th grader at Beaver Meadow School. I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader at Runlet, and I have a junior at Concord High. So as you can imagine, our life is a nightmare right now. And that's being an understatement. My husband and I both work full time. So I guess I have a lot of things that I would like to say right now, but I'll try to keep it pretty brief. I am an essential worker. I have not missed a day of work since this started. I am a nurse midwife who delivers babies, and we cannot tell people that they cannot have their babies. So I find it really kind of disturbing that teachers, if it's not on the website, that they're not essential workers, because I think they are essential workers. I think one of my biggest issues with hybrid right now is that I have a kid at the high school who is supposedly hybrid, but has some of his classes that the teachers are teaching remotely from home, and he is listening to them on a computer in a classroom, or he's asking to stay home because all of his teachers are teaching remotely. And I'm really upset about that, because in my opinion, my kid should be remote if that's the case. Why should he be putting himself in the school and learning remotely from home? So that's one of the comments that I would like to make. But in terms of the travel, I don't have a choice at my job. If I choose to travel outside the state, which I think a lot of people have, they have to quarantine for 14 days and they don't get paid. So most of us at my job have chosen not to go away for the holidays, and it's a bummer, but I think that, we have to do what we have to do to keep our jobs. So I'm disturbed at the fact that my kid's going to get told that he's going to have to go remote for 2 weeks because I have teachers that want to go away and travel when I'm not allowed to travel as a parent, basically, if I want to have a job. So I'm already upset that my kids are in school 2 days a week instead of full time, particularly when we have an infectious disease physician telling us it's okay for the kids to go back full time. And I have friends in the state whose kids are in school 5 days a week or 4 days a week, are doing fine, wearing masks and social distancing. So I really am struggling with being told that I'm going to have 5 children now at home remotely again when the 2 day a week is not working for our family as it is. So that's basically just a comment. I don't really have a question, but I wanted to throw my 2 cents out there.
Angela, thank you. It's important for us to take into account every avenue of this situation and everyone's perception and reality. So your reality is as real as it gets. So I really appreciate you speaking up. Thank you.
Okay. Next one, Gretchen Stallings. If you could unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, and where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Hi there, I am Gretchen Stallings. I'm from Concord, New Hampshire, and I have 2 children that attend Abbott Downing. I am really glad that you guys are addressing the comments in the chat. I hope that you'll read all of them in the event that people don't have a chance to speak up. I'm going to just share 3 points. This is a really difficult time, and it has been a difficult time for months. But I want to just say to the school board members, you've been elected by the citizens of this community to make some really, really tough choices. And in this case, they do impact directly the health and the safety of our children. And unfortunately, it's life and death for our most vulnerable family members, older folks, and those who have underlying health issues. And so I would just put it out there that, for not to have a choice is really disturbing for me. I do hear that not everyone is in the same situation, but there certainly are families that would be able to have their kids move to remote during this time. And to not offer that choice, I truly feel is irresponsible, and that you think very, very seriously about that, because at the end of the day, you'll need to be accountable for what happens as a result of the decision making that occurs. And secondly, community members have been engaged for months as well, and had lots of opportunity to speak with school board members, and it felt we were working together when the matrices were developed, and it's really disturbing that that work is not being honored. That was the precedence that was set, that was what was voted on, and that was the path that was to be moved forward. And that was what we had time to prepare ourselves for. So that notice was given, and it seems as though we're going right back to the drawing board when we've already done a lot of work to set the tone and to set the plans. So, the reason that I'm stressed about this is that it's not only the teachers that may or may not travel, it's students, and then it's also visitors coming into the state. Many of us have college-age students who will be coming back to visit for the holidays from their respective colleges and from all over the country. And I think that it's important to realize that. I think it's also important that while some people have a very high integrity where this is concerned, others will need to travel and may or may not report that. So my concern, I think, is shared by many, and I appreciate the time that I've been given to be able to voice those comments and concerns. Thank you so very much. And, you know, I will support whatever decisions are made, but really wanted to make sure that those concerns were heard.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Okay. Next one, Maria Solange. If you could unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, and where you're from.
Was that Marilyn Salagay? Is that who you're calling on?
Sorry, I botched that. My
No
apologies.
worries. Okay, so I am a teacher at Concord High, and I also live in Concord. And I also have 2 small children, one with autism. So, you know, I know what it's like to try to work and take care of kids. It's not an easy task at all. I'm also a single mother. So I am working remote full-time because of my own, you know, things that I won't go into here, but the district knows the reasons why I'm home full-time, teaching remotely. And I just want to mention a couple things. One advantage I'll just talk on high school. That's the one I know, so I'll tell you that. When the district is remote, when all the high school students are remote, we have twice as much time with each student. So when the school went to hybrid, you know, that cut my instruction time with my students in half. And I understand the reasons. I'm not going into the decision making. I just want to let people know that I have half as much time to interact with my students with this particular way of doing things. And I also wanted to go back to, you know, the equity talk about why would it be okay to have some kids in school with not everyone in school? And really, that goes down to numbers. You know, the less face-to-face time people have with each other, the less risk of spreading the virus. And I feel like people are tired of COVID. You know, we have this COVID fatigue thing going on. I see students not wearing their masks, even when they're Zooming in with me from school. And I worry that people are not taking it seriously enough because it's been going on for so long. And I'm concerned about the long-term impacts that COVID has with people's health. Even if it's a mild case of COVID, we don't know enough about this virus to really know what a mild case of COVID even means. We don't know what it's going to do. And I know that there are teachers who are teaching in the building, and at the high school level, you interact with more than 100 people face-to-face. That's minimum 100 people during that week. And there are lots of teachers who do not feel comfortable doing that. You know, there are teachers who won't even go to the grocery store to try to limit their contacts with other people, like people who are doing every single thing they can to lower their risks. And teachers were not, you know, there are teachers working who would prefer to be remote and aren't given that option. I'm sure you guys are all aware that remote only went to people who had specific needs. And, you know, anyway, that's a whole legal thing. But that's all I really wanted to know. I just wanted people to know there are benefits to remote, and less interactions, you know, it's all a numbers game. It's all a probability risk thing. So the less interactions, the better. That's basically all. I get nervous, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mary. It's okay to be nervous. Jack?
Yep. Okay, next one with their hand up, Stacy Duffy. Again, if you could state your first name, last name, and where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, Stacy Duffy, Concord. I have a middle schooler and a high schooler. I just want to say I think that the full remote schedule in the fall was awesome. My kids felt like they were getting a lot of FaceTime with their teachers and learning a lot. Right now, they're both doing the hybrid model, and they're getting a lot less time with their teachers. Their homework has been very limited. Some days they don't have much homework. So I'm just throwing that out there right now. And then over the holidays, I feel that if we're allowing the teachers to travel and then not quarantining, that is a huge issue as a parent to then send my kid to school knowing that their teachers were out of state and not allowing them to travel out of state because I don't want them infected. So I think that we should really look at that and make it fair.
Are there any left for mommy? Go check.
Sorry, we had an unmuted person. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Sorry about that, Stacey.
No, that's all right. I think that's pretty much all I want to do. I do agree with most of the people that have spoken tonight about teachers and travel.
Thank you, Stacy.
Okay, next one with their hand raised is Laura. Again, if you could unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, and go ahead and make your comment.
Thank you. My name's Laura Hardy. I have been trying to keep up with the comments and that people have been making. The one thing I haven't heard is more information, or I've heard some people say that the kids, sorry, I can hear someone's mic unmuted. I am concerned about the level of instruction that they're getting in the hybrid model. So just to give you my experience of the hybrid, I have a son in first grade, and I know I've listened to a lot of these meetings, and it's been said, oh, we have to think of our youngest learners. I agree with the people that have been saying that since we've gone hybrid, 2.5 out of 5 days, the 3 kids that are in my pod do not get any direct contact from their teacher or feedback on any of the work that they submit. And I've been in contact with their principal, and they just don't have the time.
Are you still there, Laura?
Did she get cut off?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry if you're hearing feedback. Everybody's muted, so if you're hearing something, I apologize. I don't see anybody else.
Yeah, sorry, it's probably me echoing in the theater. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it there tonight, but that's all I wanted to say is that I have loved hybrid, and my son and the kids I work with on remote days love going to school, but I'm definitely 100% for going fully remote after Thanksgiving until it's safe to come back. I think it's going to be less complicated. I understand that this is just my situation. I know lots of people have a lot of different situations, but I genuinely think that the kids that I watch, from 7:30 until 6 o'clock at night, 5 days a week, are not getting the education that they should through this hybrid model. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
All right, so that's the last ones with the hands raised. Now, I have 2 phone numbers down the bottom, so I'll go right to those.
Perfect, thank you.
Remember, there's always a delay. It could be as much as 30 to 45 seconds. So I will call the number, and if they unmute themselves, they do. If they don't, we'll just move on, okay?
Yep.
So phone number ending in 7242, area code 603. If you'd like to speak, I believe it's *6 to unmute yourself and go ahead and make your comment. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one, and then we'll give them both a few moments. Phone number ending in 6431, area code 603. If you'd like to make a comment, please hit *6 to unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, where you're from, and make your comment. All right, so far nothing, and there's no one else with their hands raised at the moment. Oh, Liza, go ahead.
Thanks. Taking it all in and trying to find a middle ground that makes sense. The one thing that I can't stop thinking about is the fact that the decision-making grid hasn't really worked for us, and I feel strongly that we need to rewrite that before we make a decision. I don't know exactly what I want to see in it, but I think because we are making decisions that do not conform to the matrix, let's look and see why we're doing that. And if the reason is, where the community transmission is taking place or other reasons, that would be extremely helpful to me. I mean, with 2 kids in school right now doing the hybrid plan, my personal perspective is that they're getting less school, they're getting less direct instruction, but they're also getting some very valuable time with their teachers. And it's a trade-off. And as a parent, I would be content either way, but I feel really, I don't even know what the word is, but people have such strong opinions and reasons for having those strong opinions based on their own personal experience, both earlier in the fall and since we moved to hybrid. And I don't know what the answer is. I do know that given current transmission trends, we may not end up having a choice in going remote as the weeks roll by. Thank you.
Thank you, Liza.
I don't have any other at the moment.
Okay, I'm looking around the room to see if anyone else has something else to add. Danielle, thank you.
I have 2 questions. I'll do them both real quick. So I think the number you said, Donna, was 323 kids that you had heard from so far planning to travel, not necessarily out of state, but somewhere.
For the winter holiday, yeah. For Thanksgiving, it was
okay.
233.
And then, oh, sorry, I wrote down 2 separate numbers. One for Thanksgiving and one for, either way. What is the plan? Maybe I sort of missed this or we talked about it briefly, but what is the plan for those kids who have said they're traveling, who do need to quarantine if we do stay hybrid? It sounds like for the high school, it's not really an issue that they can remote in. What about for elementary school?
So that's what I had mentioned that this morning we were talking about this with the principals, and we asked that question, where do we need to go with that? And they felt that they wanted to continue to do what they do now, which is make specific plans with each family to make it work, whether it means they're going to Zoom into the classroom or whether it means they're going to get work to do asynchronously with some kind of check-ins, or whether we're going to use some other folks to check in. We talked about everything, including looking for some additional teachers who would do some work and check in with them. So we've kind of thought about all those things, but I think it would be pretty individualized as it is now. This happens regularly now. Mike mentioned a couple kids who needed to be home. So these are not unusual situations.
So those families would just have to reach out to their teacher to make a plan?
That's right.
Okay. And then my last question, sort of, I guess, maybe hypothetical, I don't know. It seems to me with the numbers that piggybacking off of what someone else had just said, that who knows what's going to happen. It seems like it's easier to plan to be remote and to know as a working parent that I need to figure out a solution versus tonight I get an email and tomorrow things are different. So I guess it's a statement, not a question, but just a thought.
So I'd like to comment on that. I had this outside-the-box idea, which made Kathleen nervous, so it made me think it's a great idea. In terms of the middle school and the high school, because there's so much back and forth with where children are receiving their instruction and where teachers are giving it from, to go completely remote wouldn't be as big of a deal because it's the thing that would change is where the student was sitting, not who's teaching what when. In the elementary school, my thoughts were, in a way to look at, because if I could pick the perfect scenario, my likely scenario would be that we keep our elementary kids hybrid and we have our bigger schools remote. That's just my thought and opinion in my head. But in looking at how can we keep kids in the building at all levels in a way that works brings me back to September. And the Boys and Girls Club and, different places offered a place for parents to bring their kids to do their remote learning. So you work full-time, and you have a kindergartner that you send to a child care center, and that child care center opens their iPad, and they have their schooling there in the child care center. So we had a lot of students who were participating in Concord School District learning remotely, but not at home. They were in a supportive environment. So my thoughts are, why don't we keep our students hybrid? Why don't we have half of them come on Mondays and Thursdays and the other half on Tuesdays and Fridays? But the teaching is all following a remote style. So every student on Monday, whether you're home or at school, is logged in with their teacher, and they're all learning together. And on Tuesday, the kids that were on their iPad in school are now on their iPad at home. But 4 days a week, students are getting direct instruction from their teachers because it's following the remote delivery model. Then, should a teacher need a 2-week quarantine, we have Mike Reardon's idea of, having substitutes or people that come in to monitor classes. It happens now. If a teacher's teaching remotely, there's somebody that monitors those kids. So if we have a teacher, that cannot do their remote teaching from school and they have to do it from home, it's no interruption to our students. They're home, they're quarantined, they're teaching, and we have a class monitor or a paraprofessional or somebody with the kids in the building. So I know it's not been mentioned at all, and I'm not expecting anyone to think it's a great idea, but I just feel that in maintaining consistency, nothing changes for the kids, except they're all doing the same thing, just like they were all September, but half of them are doing it in school. So on Mondays, when the 5-year-olds are getting that group is in school, they have lunch in the cafeteria, they play at recess, they have all that social interaction. But the kids at home aren't doing nothing, and we're not dependent upon a teacher being able to be in the building to deliver service from an entire grade level. So this is just my brain trying to fix things. Tom, you were my inspiration here. So anyway, that's all. Jim, did you want to say something? Okay, Jim and then David.
Barb, then we also have some people
I just
with
had a
their hands
question
raised.
for Kathleen, and that is with regards to testing. Is testing available for our teachers? And for any teacher who wants to go in and get a test, are they able to do that?
My understanding is that they're not able to do that yet. That I know that there was an effort to bring in additional testing for the state, and teachers would be, in the priority group, but not yet. If they have a test now, they have to have a symptom and they have to get referred by the doctor or, go to a clinic and express why they're there. They don't just they're not just testing anybody, is my understanding. Unless things have changed. Yeah.
It was my understanding that there is testing that doesn't require you to be referred to by a primary care physician or another physician. As a matter of fact, I've been tested twice without any symptoms or anything else, just because I wanted to be tested. And I would hope that we look into this and let teachers know and help facilitate that if they want to be tested, that they have an opportunity to be, because it just seems like a reasonable request from them. Thank you.
Yeah, and there's a site online where people could go to ask for help to get tested, and then usually someone will call you back and tell you. You can't always get it that same day, but it's usually pretty quick, and then you might have to wait a few days for your results. But there's plenty of people who are being tested throughout the district, teachers and students and others.
Yeah, I thought you were
Yes, and it's on
talking
our
about every
website.
teacher being tested, when they come in, that kind of thing. Right. Okay. All right, yeah, I misunderstood.
Pamela, I saw your hand. Okay, David, do you have a question?
Yeah, a question and a couple of comments. First of all, if you are quarantined, it doesn't matter if you test positive or not. You're still quarantined. I have been tested. I've dealt with the quarantine. I've also dealt with remote learning. Also dealt with somewhat what you call hybrid learning. And I worry about the safety of all of these kids, for sure. And I worry about the safety of the families, and I worry about the safety of me and my kids and my grandkids and everybody. And I am really worried. But as I analyze this and think about it and work with it, the schools are our safest places. Realistically, when you look at the numbers, we had someone that came in and was tested positive. None of the people at the school tested positive. It's one of the safest places because we can control things. The notion, again, that if we go hybrid, we're going to control and make it safer for everybody. I mean, if we go fully remote, we're going to make it safer for everybody. We'll make it safer for some of us, but not for all of us, because that doesn't mean that they're not going out and going, you know, our places of infection seem to be, you know, in smaller venues. And so, you know, I worry about everybody, but I do think we've demonstrated that the hybrid model accommodates the largest number of options for families. And to Barb's point, I know Barb is an out-of-the-box thinker, and I really appreciate those observations, but for a faculty, I've learned that to throw something new at people at about this time would be hard. And you would have to, you know, get the faculty's opinion on those type of things, and how did, you know, and I think at some point that, you know, depending on how long this lasts, I think we may really have to rethink what hybrid looks like, as we did in the fall, as we look at remote differently from what we did in the spring. The teachers are working tirelessly. Everyone, families are working tirelessly, and to expect that the quality of our education isn't going to suffer some is being a little bit naive. It is going to suffer some. It isn't perfect. It's far from perfect. It's really difficult. You know, you can't do the sort of activities that you used to do. You can't have the same experiences we're used to doing as teachers and as parents and as grandparents. And so it's a struggle. But I think the models that we're working with right now, to me, suggest that the schools are pretty safe places when you compare it to almost any other institution. So I'm as worried as I am. I do see the value of our hybrid model, even with the numbers being the way they are. So thank you.
Thank you. Pamela. And then I know we have some hands up on the screen, so Jack, when Pamela's done, I'll come to you.
I agree with you about the general safety at the schools. I think there are families, though, that are very anxious. And so you said there's space in some of the elementary remote classes. Could we open up those spaces and figure out a fourth grade solution post-Thanksgiving so that families that want to switch don't have to wait to January to switch?
I think I'll repeat what Donna said, in that the principals we talked about it this morning, and that they will work with families to accommodate that. I guess I'm missing a point here.
It's a slightly different question than the kids who want to quarantine. There are families who are traveling but are concerned that other people are not following the same restrictions they are, or uncomfortable with the case numbers, or don't like how hybrid is going and want to make the switch to remote. So it's not a short 2-week thing. Right now, we've told parents they can't switch until January. Can we open that up earlier post-Thanksgiving?
Pamela, do you mean for a permanent switch, like remote for the rest of the year?
Right. Okay. We were going to do that in January, and I think what Pamela was asking us is, would you please look at it again and consider opening it up now for all the anxiety that's going to, you know, come to a peak over the holidays. So yes, to answer your question, I think we can. The principals indicated that they would be willing to do that. We know this is an issue. If we, and you know, they want to stay hybrid. The elementary staff want to stay hybrid. There's no question. When I say staff, the administrators shared that position with us. They want to be in hybrid. So we talk about how can we open up those slots for those youngsters that want to be in remote.
Awesome, thank you.
So it is an option? Sorry, I'm just confused because I thought that was not an option.
Well, it wasn't an option. We talked about it being in January. But,
Right.
I mean, we talked with the principals today about opening those possibilities. So we're going to have to look at it because you've got to remember numbers now. If we get hundreds and hundreds that go to remote, I don't have hundreds and hundreds of teachers, so I have to switch. That means they have to change their teacher. So just...
I was just confused.
And then they
those
don't
are
wanna
the families that I would feel a lot better moving to hybrid if people did have that option, but I thought that wasn't.
Yeah,
so
well,
I
we
just wanted
decided to
clarify.
wait until January. We were going to plan it over the next month, but I think if what the principals told us today, that there are slots available, then we would entertain those requests. But you got to understand, if it's overwhelming, we talked about it being a lottery because we're worried we're going to have so many that now all of a sudden the hybrid teachers are doing their hybrid, but they can't do both.
Yeah.
You cannot do both.
Especially
So
for the littles.
That's why we held off, Danielle. You know, it's still about an 80-20 split, too, just so you know that. Around 80% of the kids are hybrid and 20% are remote. It's still stayed pretty much that way. We've had a few switches back and forth.
Okay. Jack, is there anyone hand up or?
So there's 4, 3 are look to be new, and 4th is someone that commented out earlier. So I will go down that list.
Thank you.
If I can get that chat thing to go away. The one, hold on a second. It's worse than YouTube. The person that's logged in under district, parent, and teacher, if you could unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, my name is Sharon Reichert, and I'm a parent and a teacher in the district. And I just had a few comments to share and a perspective to give, both being a classroom teacher at Krista McAuliffe School. I'm actually currently teaching 3rd grade remote students from a couple of different schools, and I have 2 children who attend Krista McAuliffe School and one who attends Runlet Middle School. And I want to say thank you, first of all, to the board for having to make some really difficult decisions throughout this year. I can't imagine being in your shoes because I know that no matter what you do, there will be stakeholders who are not pleased, and it must be really difficult. But I'd like to, like I said, offer my perspective as both a classroom teacher and parent. One aspect of the change in our school year that's been, I think, really difficult for families, students, and staff has been the uncertainty of what is coming next. So not every scenario can be predicted, but some circumstances can definitely be planned in a way to give stakeholders a sense of control and certainty as to what they can expect is coming. I believe planning ahead for a remote holiday period would allow families to make decisions about visiting their relatives and loved ones. For my family specifically, if we don't have a remote period like before our Christmas break, my children won't be able to visit their grandparents, aunts, and uncles. And I know a guiding factor for these decisions as far as like surveying staff and families has been, are you traveling outside of New England? But New England has COVID cases too, and more of them every day. So regardless of where your family lives, both students and staff deserve that respite of safely spending time with loved ones this holiday season. And without that opportunity, I feel that the very real burnout that myself and many of my colleagues are experiencing will become just a lot to handle on mental health, and as well as families, students, and all the stakeholders in the district who are really wanting to connect with family in a safe way over the holiday period. And I believe someone spoke earlier of that COVID fatigue. I know many people are just tired of it, and so then we get a little bit lax. But I think when done safely, we can visit family and give ourselves that time. At the last meeting, I know it was mentioned that of the 60 or 113 staff traveling outside of New England for different holidays, that they weren't all classroom teachers. And it was stated that many of them were support staff, educational assistants, et cetera. I'm not sure that this should really skew the results of the decision making, because our schools really would not function without those members of our staff as well. We don't have enough of them as it is. And so there's a desperate need for some of those people to be there, or our schools won't function properly. Lastly, and I think equally as important, the student perspective on going remote for the holidays is very important. Most students would probably tell you that being in school with their friends and their teachers is where they choose to be. And each child has their own ups and downs with hybrid versus remote, my own children included. They both have very different experiences with both things. And we made the really hard decision to send them back hybrid when that model opened up. And for the most part, it's been going fairly well, more so for my son at elementary school. It's a very different experience, I think, at elementary versus middle school. And echoing what some other people were saying, there is a definite lack of instruction with the hybrid model on those independent days, which I knew, going into it. We made that decision. But as a remote teacher, I know that I am providing, direct instruction all day long, pretty much 4.5 days a week to my students. So while I know there's a lot of talk, negatively around students learning remote, I can tell you that I'm working really, really hard to make sure that my third grade students are experiencing the most positive and, beneficial instructional time that they can while I'm with them. So I just feel like, if we plan ahead for a remote holiday break, it will give schools and teachers enough time to prepare for the change and to make the necessary improvements for a seamless transition for a short period of time, and allow people to know what to expect. And it will help with the, the mental health and everything as well. And I think that when presented the right way to students with a positive approach, that most children are actually pretty flexible and adapt better than most adults. Again, this is my experience, and I know that there are hardships in many different families for different reasons, so I know it doesn't reflect everyone's outlook. But I think that if we give teachers and students a chance to do things with a little preparation, it can let us do what we do best and make it work. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. It's great to hear your voice, by the way.
Thanks, Barb.
Okay, next one, Ryan Burke. If you could unmute yourself, please state your first name, last name, where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Hi, thank you. Yes, my name is Ryan Burke. I'm a parent of 2 boys at Krista McAuliffe Elementary School. First, I want to say thank you to all of the board members and the administration. I know you guys have been working so hard on really tough decisions this school year, and we appreciate the effort. And I know you've also spent a lot of time responding and reading my emails, so I appreciate that as well. One thing I really wanted to emphasize, because I feel like we focused a lot in this meeting on the travel outside of New England piece of the risk picture of the holidays, if we can call it that. But I want to point out that community transmission is rising in New England. And in fact, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut all have counties that are in the highest transmission category. There is no quarantine requirement for travel within New England, yet we know that local travel will be happening. Local travel and local gatherings will result in increased community transmission. And we are already seeing a dramatic increase in cases in New Hampshire just in this last week. So our statewide case count doubled, which is playing out in Merrimack County as well. That increase started on November 5th, and it has been sustained since. So we are looking at a time period right now of substantial increased transmission, which is especially concerning leading up to the holidays when we know people will travel regardless of whether it's within New England or without, and families will gather. So I urge you to keep in mind that kind of full picture of risk and not just to focus on the travel outside of New England. The other thing I want to address, because I still feel confused by Kathleen, your answers tonight around whether families, if you choose as a district to stay in hybrid, whether families can switch to remote prior to January. You were pretty clear in saying up until 20 minutes ago that families would not be allowed to switch until January, but you've also been very clear in your words and in the published document to the community that the district would be remote when we had substantial community transmission. And we have had substantial community transmission for many weeks, as you guys know. And I understand that you are now awaiting school transmission risk factors higher than community transmission risk factors as evidence that you're still in hybrid learning. And so I understand that, and although I disagree with it, I think that we can make a good argument why it is you are doing what you're doing. However, those families that agreed to send our kids back into the schools under the premise that the school would switch to remote once we hit high substantial community transmission are feeling a bit betrayed. And you, I mean, as far as I know, have left those families with no option to switch to remote, even though we are now not following that matrix, which parents agreed, which parents factored into their decision when they agreed to send their kids back. So if it is a possibility to open up remote for elementary schools, then I think that makes a big difference for the families that are very concerned about not having the ability to switch, even though COVID transmission is at a substantial rate. So please just consider that as well, although I feel very strongly that the schools should be on remote learning for the holiday season. Thank you again for your time, and I know you guys are working really hard, and it is very, very much appreciated.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you.
Okay, next one, M. Heinbach. If you could unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Yes, good evening. This is Melissa Heinbach from Concord. I have a student at Concord High, and I also have a student at Runlet Middle School. I would really like to thank everybody on the board and the administration for really doing a Herculean job during a challenging time. But I do have some concerns. I really appreciate the previous caller. I will not reiterate her points, but I do agree with everything that Ryan just said. And for a school district and an administration that are trying to regain the community's trust after a very tumultuous time, I find it deeply troubling that you are not following your own decision-making matrix on when to go from hybrid to remote. And as Gina Cannon pointed out, your matrix was based on data, and it's very problematic that you're not honoring it. I really encourage everybody to look at the numbers and charts on the Department of Health and Human Services dashboard and on the Johns Hopkins website for New Hampshire specifically. I think the charts will scare the living daylights out of you. The rises in cases and community transmission is astounding. So based on the numbers, I would recommend that we go remote from the week of Thanksgiving until mid-January. And I am also deeply concerned about your suggestion to not require teachers to quarantine after traveling. I think that's just flat out irresponsible and unsafe. So I would like to continue to encourage you to make the safety of our children, teachers, and staff your top priority at all times. And I will yield the rest of my time to my high school student.
Hello, my name is Nathan Schmitz. I live in Concord, New Hampshire, and I'm currently a senior at Concord High. So personally, I think I'm reiterating what other people have said, but I'm also kind of confused personally as to why this matrix hasn't been followed by you guys, especially when you guys set certain guidelines that you said you would follow, such as us being remote with X amount of cases, and right now we have surpassed X amount of cases. So technically, according to that matrix, we should be remote. And currently, I am on the Johns Hopkins website for the trends for New Hampshire according to a 7-day moving average and daily cases. And as of yesterday, we had 211 cases, which almost hit our previous highest number of 217 cases. And just the day before that, we hit, on November 8th, we hit 247 cases. So that went up from the 217 previous top number of COVID-19 daily cases. And both the 7-day moving average and the daily cases for both a state level and a national level have been going up. So I really want you guys to reconsider going remote during the holidays, especially taking into account this data from top medical experts that's showing a high increase in daily cases and in deaths. Thank you.
Thank you, Nathan. Jack, is there anyone else?
Yeah, I'm just trying to.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. I'll just move on to. So again, Angela Nelson, if you wish to make a comment, go ahead and unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
Yep, my name is Angela Nelson, and I called in earlier with 5 children in 3 different schools at the district. I think one of the things that I wanted to mention that I didn't say, while I appreciate that the numbers are going up around us, I think that if we're going to go remote and shut down with a slight increase in numbers or even a bigger increase in numbers, I think it's very unrealistic to think that we're ever going to have these kids back in school. And I think that people are missing the point that this virus is not going to go away. And we need to learn to live with it. I think the one piece that people are not paying a lot of attention to, and I would really love to know the numbers of, is the number of mental health hospitalizations and suicide and depression rates. As I scroll down my middle schooler's history on his phone from last week, I see, what is the quickest way for me to die? Will it hurt if I slit my wrist? And suicide methods. And I think that to me is far greater of a risk for me as a parent than of my healthy 8th grader getting COVID. Because if he gets COVID, I think the numbers are very clear that he is going to recover. If he kills himself, he will not recover. And I don't think that's a funny comment at all. I'm petrified as a parent, and I'm not sure what to do with that. But I think we really need to step back and think about these kids' mental health and what's going on as their lives around them are being completely changed in so many ways for these kids. And I think it's time to step back and look at those numbers, because we're going to forget that, and we're all going to look back and really shake our heads when some things start happening to our kids. So I understand the numbers. I work in healthcare. I've been at my job for over 20 years. I work in it every day, but there are ways to protect us. And I do agree with the fact that schools are probably some of the safest place for our kids. And I also love Barb's suggestion about going to the 4 days a week, because I think that, the school board was very clear that the model that we did in the spring was a joke and did not work. Yet somehow that's okay with us now in the hybrid model, letting our kids be that way 3 days a week. So I really struggle with that. So I really love, Barb, your suggestion about 2 days in the school and having the other 2 days, at least 2 days, being remote with our teachers online, the kids being accountable for being present in the classroom and learning.
Angela, thank you, and thank you for having the courage to bring up a very uncomfortable topic. Mental health, mental illness, grief, death, things that people don't want to talk about because they're uncomfortable. So thank you for bringing that up. I think a lot of people are listening and nodding their heads in agreement and feeling all that pain inside. So thank you for being willing to share that. Do we have anyone else, Jack?
No, I'm just trying to get the hands down. They won't. Oh, I don't see that on here. So, okay. Is there a Nicole Fox? If you are on that screen, if you would unmute yourself, state your first name, last name, and where you're from, and go ahead and make your comment.
My name is Nicole Fox. I am from Concord. I have 2 children at Christa McAuliffe and 1 at Runlet. I would like to really back up Angela Nelson's comments. I agree with her that having the kids in school is really important. My children really struggled when they were in remote, particularly my youngest children in the elementary school. My youngest is in 3rd grade, and despite the best efforts of her wonderful teacher during remote, she was not really participating or learning. I am a working parent, and my kids are doing much better in school hybrid than they would be doing fully remote. I'm home during the day, but I also am working, and I am not able to teach them and keep tabs on them throughout the day. It's really challenging, and they're really thriving, even with all the compromises they've had to make for hybrid. And I also appreciated Mr. Parker's comments about how the school is a safe place where the transmission is not occurring. And I think that's great. And as far as the traveling goes, for us, we canceled our holiday plans. We are staying in town. We are not having people from out of state visit because our priority is staying safe so our kids can have the benefit of going to school. Thank you for your time, and I do appreciate all that the board has gone through, and I really, really appreciate everything that all the administrators and teachers have been dealing with this year.
Thank you, Nicole. We love hearing from parents. It's super helpful. Jack, anyone else?
So if they put the one that said district parent and teacher, I think that was Sharon. If she has another comment to make, go ahead and state your name again. And, yep.
Sure. This is Sharon Reichert, and I'm a district teacher and parent. I just wanted to follow up really quickly after hearing some of the comments about switching back and forth between hybrid and remote, and just speak from my remote teacher perspective for a moment. I definitely had, a handful of students coming from hybrid into my remote class, after the switch had been made. And I can empathize with the position of the parents as well, because like I said, I have students, or my own children, that are in the hybrid model, who went from remote to hybrid, and now one of them is, kind of wishing he was back remote while one's loving hybrid, and I can see how having that opportunity to come back and forth would be something that is good for the parents. I will speak from my teacher's perspective. As a remote teacher, it is incredibly challenging to have, especially at the elementary level, students come into your remote class on various days of every week. It takes a lot of work behind the scenes to get those students ready to join class, and it's incredibly disruptive to the learning of the class that I already have in place. So I think that parents should be afforded the right to have their kids where they feel they are safest. I think what might be helpful is if there were some way for the district to proactively, I think it probably would have been good if we did that in the beginning, but going forward, have those dates on the calendar where parents will know, okay, at this point I can switch back, and maybe they're not so far apart, the dates on the calendar, so they know, okay, we're hybrid for the next couple of weeks, and the next switch I feel like I need to go back, or I don't know, maybe just look at it from a few different perspectives, but like I said, it is extremely challenging at the elementary level to have students coming in during different times. It's very different than if you're in person and you get a new student in your class. That it's a whole different ball game. And then speaking to parents that are expressing that they want hybrid to remain in place, one thing that I would say is that I think the remote period that we're talking about, it's a really like a defined set of remote time. So going back to the spring and then this fall, we weren't quite sure at first how long would we be remote, and it was this kind of uncertainty to that time period of, you know, are we going to be remote forever? And it was really stressful for the kids and the parents not to be able to plan for work, or, you know, am I going to see my friends again? And that mental health piece does come into play. But, you know, if we were to, again, be proactive and plan this remote time for, you know, a period of time between Thanksgiving and right after Christmas break or the holiday break, and we presented that to students and families and said, you know, it's just this time period, then they can plan for that and know that hybrid is, again, an option when that's done. So it's not, you know, this is how it's going to be for the rest of the year. It's just to make it so that we do things safely, because as Mrs. Fox was mentioning before, she and her family are going to follow the rules and social distancing. They're not seeing family, they're not traveling, which is great and safe, and the way that we would hope everyone takes part in the holidays. But unfortunately, that's not going to be the case, and there's no way for us to know what families are coming back to school having followed the rules or not. So that was just something I wanted to mention. Thank you.
Thanks, Sharon.
As of right now, I don't see any additional comments.
Kathleen. Oh, Janita. Thank you.
I'd like to say something. So my mind's going like all over the place with hearing everyone's comments, and you know, I really empathize with everyone. It's such a hard time. But speaking from my views and a lot of the kids that I'm acquainted with, as a high schooler, we're able to be more independent and we're able to care for ourselves for the most part. Through this whole model, you know, we're coping, we're understanding. I know kids who have not really been taking this seriously and who have been going out with small gathering, not with any protection. I heard someone say this, and I totally agree, that people are getting restless and becoming somewhat numb to the virus. I can't imagine being a parent with a kid in elementary school or middle school. I can't imagine what it's like being at home and not being able to understand what's happening, to have your parent go to work and having to be dropped off with a grandparent, and you know, them not totally understand what's happening either. I know the hybrid is a great opportunity for me. I feel way more connected. I feel like I'm getting that connection with my teacher again, and I feel like I'm getting even more engaged. And I know that the hybrid process was crazy for all participants, but I do know some teachers that did a really great job in, you know, making it to their best efforts to engage kids and, you know, have them feel like they were being listened to, even though we weren't always able to have that connection. Many kids are generally very scared of this. We've gotten 3 positive cases in the high school. I had one person in my class who tested positive, and that definitely shook me up a little bit. It kind of made me remember that we are in something very dangerous, and it's coming closer to us a lot. And like I think his name was Nathaniel said, cases are rising, and we did base things off of statistics and how we're going to be seeing that. People are going to be coming into New Hampshire, whether they're not leaving. And, you know, I think that's a very big part that we need to be aware of. Let's see. The mental health aspect, too, I think that's a really big thing. I think sometimes when we're enclosed in such a small space, it's hard to remember that there are people for us and that we're not alone. And the sad thing is that a lot of kids think that it's easier to just leave instead of dealing with things. And I think a big thing of that is kids need to realize that there are people here for them, that their families are here for them, and that they're able to talk to their parents, because I know that it's really hard to be able to communicate with a family member because you're always scared of not necessarily being understood or anything. And I think during this time, it's a good opportunity to just kind of be with your kid again and, you know, let them know that you are here for them. But that's a whole nother thing. But I do think that going the hybrid or going remote is the safest bet, and I can't imagine what's happening with other, you know, either way, no one's gonna be 100% happy.
Wait, what happened?
But I definitely think that going remote is a good bet until, you know, after the holidays, and then we can jump back into everything once again.
Thank you, Janita.
I don't have any other at the moment.
Okay, it's 8 o'clock. It always feels later this time of year. I think it's the whole daylight savings goes away and it feels like it's 10 o'clock at night at 2 in the afternoon. So I think Kathleen and everyone else, you have a lot of work cut out for you in the next 48 hours. We chose not to vote on this in one meeting because it's too much information to process clearly and logically and have any transparency at all with our district. Kathleen, I hope that you'll take everything you've heard, which I know that you will, I don't need to hope, and really look at it and process the information and look at the numbers and all those things. We'll have a special board meeting on Thursday, and the sole purpose of which is to vote on what our plans are as a district for the holiday season. So once again, I want to thank the community members that, you know, gave up their evening to take part and offer very, very thoughtful information. Hardest part of this is there's no wrong opinion here. They just don't all agree. And Kathleen, if you have anything closing that you'd like to say, then.
Well, I think the instruction committee should make a recommendation to the full board. I think that was the purpose of tonight. I think.
Right.
I mean, you have to understand, I mean, we can do a lot of work in 48 hours, but I think that it's important that we know, our principals and our staff understand where you're headed. So I think people anticipated tonight that the instructional committee would have a consensus so that they could share that as a starting point for the school board, and that was my understanding. But
no, actually, you're absolutely right. So I guess as chairperson, it would be my honor and responsibility to make a motion.
No, you can't make a motion as the chair of the committee. The other committee members have to. You can't do it.
Oh.
So
God is good.
It may fail, but I would move that we go remote as of the Monday of Thanksgiving week, and we stay remote until Martin Luther King Day, or the Friday of that week.
I would second that.
Okay, let me write it down. And Danielle seconds. So to clarify the motion, Gina moves that the Concord School District returns to remote instruction from the week after Thanksgiving? No, the week of Thanksgiving?
Let me give you an actual date, because that will be more helpful than.
that would be November 30.
I understand.
Right, yeah. That we would recommend to the board that we go hybrid as of, well, I guess as of
Did you say
close
hybrid?
of school? Yeah, but I was thinking the close of school Friday or the 20th. And we stay remote until.
Give me that first date again, please.
Sorry.
I was listening to two people.
The Friday before Thanksgiving is the 20th. The Monday is the 23rd. I don't know how you want to write it.
We normally go to school, though, Monday and Tuesday of that week.
I understand that. And then we stay remote until the 22nd of January, which is the Friday after Martin Luther King Day.
Are you suggesting that we not go to school on the 20th and the 21st? Is that what you're saying on that Monday and Tuesday?
Yes.
All I want to do is make sure that you know that every time we do that, that's 14 hours of instructional time. I still have a responsibility to meet the 990 and the 945, which is the state recommendations for instructional time at elementary and high school level.
I understand that, but that we go remote, not that we're on vacation that whole time, but we go remote as of that date.
Okay.
So Gina would move that we recommend to the board moving into a remote model of instruction on our last day of hybrid would be Friday, November 20th. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
And that we would remain in remote through the Friday after Martin Luther King Day, which is January 22nd,
That is, yes.
2021.
Yep.
Danielle, do you continue to second that?
Yes.
Okay, do we have discussion? And I actually think as a chairperson, I can make motions.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, that was explained otherwise to me,
No, if
so
we
I
have to make a
apologize.
recommendation to the board, I can't make that recommendation. So I believe we should be going hybrid and stay hybrid.
I don't know how we do it if there's 4 members.
That's right. I mean, well,
It might just be a split.
I don't think necessarily, Kathleen, we're going to agree, and the larger board may need to make that decision on Thursday. I don't mean to take your role.
No,
in all this.
I don't
Yeah.
agree with all aspects of the motion either. I think that on November 10th, I think it's too soon to make such a drastic decision. That's just my opinion, but were we to call a vote on this, I think we would be 2 in favor of starting remote and 2 not so sure this is a good recommendation right now. Is that accurate? Shall I take a vote and see, and then we go from there?
I think you have to take a vote on the motion.
Right.
I say nay.
So I have to call your name first.
Oh, sorry.
So we'll now vote on the motion. So Gina?
Aye.
Barb, I am a nay. David?
Nay.
And Danielle?
Aye.
So
It goes just about the way everything else is, 50-50, and it's been, it's amazing.
isn't this the nature of COVID right now?
Right, right.
So this would, my understanding then of Robert's Rules of Order, et cetera, is that we come to the full board on Thursday with a lot to talk about and a decision to make. Jim, would it be appropriate? I feel that we have to hold ourselves to a decision on Thursday. I don't feel that, but I guess that's part of what will happen on Thursday. So, yeah. Say again?
Our interest is to get a well thought out. Our interest has been to get a well thought out position in time for parents to be able to make
correct
proper planning.
Right.
And our kids to get,
right,
their things together.
Okay. So Kathleen, at this point, I believe that our meeting is done, that we can adjourn for the evening and drink a lot of water and get a lot of sleep until Thursday, and come ready to hash it out and make decisions. Again, I want to thank everybody. And it's nice to have some sort of consensus as a board, but if a board doesn't have consensus, then we have the opportunity and the honor and the privilege and the duty to hash it out and come up with something that will work. So, thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody.